Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about a fascinating subject with Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons. I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and Dungeons and Dragons parasocial relationships, as an intellectual property, specifically in context to Critical Role and what's happening with Critical Role, um, specifically connected to Ashley Johnson, right? So really fascinating occurrences happening with Ashley Johnson and with Critical Role and Brian Foster, who is Ashley Johnson's ex-boyfriend, and I think actually ex-fiance at one point. So let me summarize what I want to establish within the purview of this video. Um, Dungeons and Dragons is so huge, so successful that unlike any other OSR tabletop role playing game and any indie tabletop role playing game in the world, it can make millionaires just by for people who stand next to Dungeons and Dragons. But that is a parasocial. So Dungeons and Dragons has parasocial relationships with other intellectual properties, right? And specifically, Critical Role is definitely one of these, right? Critical Dungeons and Dragons has a massively intertwined relationship with Critical Role. So I think there's some interesting things. So one, Critical Role has a scandal right now, a big one, and frankly, I think this could be a bigger scandal than anything that ever happened on Dungeons and Dragons. What's interesting though is Dungeons and Dragons has this, conga line of haters, right? So those haters include OSR, those haters include indie. The OSR hates Dungeons and Dragons because it's inclusive and progressive, right? The indie has a lot of haters. Not all OSR people hate Dungeons and Dragons, but I would say the vast majority, right? And I would also say the vast majority of indie producers and game producers and most of their game masters hate Dungeons and Dragons because Dungeons and Dragons outperforms them so hard it's embarrassing for them, right? So Dungeons and Dragons has and the media hates Dungeons and Dragons because they want, like you're seeing this right now, Tabletop Games is trying to make a channel, and they don't want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons every day. But what they're finding is that the greatest achievements of the OSR and indie don't even get the same clicks as the errata for Dungeons and Dragons. So there's a lot of haters in the media for Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of haters in the OSR for Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of haters in the indie. And so for every time Hasbro has a minor scandal, everybody's coming out talking about it, right? Well, with Critical Role, they have plot armor, right? Because because one, the OSR loves Critical Role. Why does the OSR love Critical Role when Critical Role is not OSR? Because they love to see anybody who can put up any numbers against Dungeons and Dragons, and sometimes Critical Role would do that, right? Now the reality is, Critical Role is besties with Dungeons and Dragons, and even their sharpest, rebukes of Dungeons and Dragons are always caveated 6 ways to Sunday. But the OSR likes the idea that there's someone who has the power to beat Dungeons and Dragons. And and actually this year, Matthew Mercer there were a lot of questions, a lot of speculation that for once, finally, Dungeons and Dragons would be beaten by Matthew Mercer. But then it turned out that Candela Obscura was had a garbage rules engine that was simply a copy of the brilliant Blades in the Dark. And everybody's like, yeah, Blades in the Dark is brilliant, but I'm not going to buy your scrub copy you cobbled together by at request by Taliesin Jaffe. Nobody's impressed by that, right? Nobody's impressed by your, hey, copy John Harper's work. And also Daggerheart looks like it's going to arrive stillborn as well, right? So the reality is the idea is OSR's hopes that Matthew Mercer would defeat Dungeons and Dragons have been thoroughly stripped, right? So, but there is a major scandal happening for Critical Role right now. And so essentially what happened is they're one of the people that Critical Role was putting on camera, Brian Foster, is now under huge allegations, right? And that looked like it was going to turn out to be, super clear bad guy. But then that story got misty. A haze kind of came over the clarity of who was of what exactly was happening, right? And that narrative is not unfolding the way in the legal court case the way it was expected, right? So, but the reality is, Critical Role owns all of it, right? They put Brian Foster on camera. He did Undeadwood, and this led to hundreds of Critical Role videos coming down, right? And and that's pretty incredible too, because there are now literally hundreds of Critical Role videos which can no longer be viewed. And again, nobody expected that to happen, right? So Critical Role is in the middle of this scandal, right? This scandal, where they trusted somebody it looks like they trusted somebody they shouldn't have trusted, right? Ashley Johnson is having a very difficult time. I think she's still at this moment, I think she's still an incredibly trusted, valued member of Critical Role, but all the work that Brian Foster did for Critical Role is going to try to wash that away. So they have their own scandal. What's the lesson for this when we think about Dungeons & Dragons? It's interesting. Here's my take, right? One, I think people love to clap when Hasbro gets in trouble with Dungeons & Dragons and has a Dungeons & Dragons scandal. One of the things I'll tell you is right now, and they're like, oh, look at us at OSRs and look at us indies, right? We don't have scandals like this. You guys are running a poor shop, right? And I think this is what we now see. This is what's being proven from this Critical Role scandal. No. These OSR shops and these indie shops have just as much scandal as D&D. The reason it doesn't look like that is nobody cares, right? You don't hear any of these scandals because nobody cares about these games, right? They don't care about OSR games. They don't care about indie games. And they're too small to get any traction, right? But if you get anywhere close to the level of success Dungeons & Dragons has, which Critical Role have, scandals will occur not because you're running a poor shop, but because when you are at Dungeons & Dragons level, Dungeons & Dragons does not get covered for scandal every month because they're doing something wrong. They get covered for scandal because they're under a microscope, and anyone who is under that microscope will hit scandals. I think the Critical Role situation is proof of that, right? And then the other thing that's interesting is literally just standing next to Dungeons & Dragons can give you more momentum than my point is the Robin to the Critical Role Robin, being Critical Role Robin to Dungeons & Dragons Batman makes you bigger than any OSR or indie possible. So the sidekicks of Dungeons & Dragons are bigger than the greatest champions of the OSR and the indie, right? And that is why this scandal is getting some traction and it's getting some coverage, right? Not really because people care about Critical Role, but because they care about Dungeons & Dragons, right? So I think this scandal is coming to the light specifically because of Critical Role's proximity to Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I know this is an incredibly touchy subject, right? So I've just given you my humble opinion. Every word of that is my humble opinion, right? The best of my understanding of the situation. If you know anything about the situation that I'm unaware of, or if you think I got any of that wrong, I'm willing to listen and learn. Please enlighten me in the comments below with your humble opinion. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.